Shalom, shalom again, and Shabbat shalom as it is Friday afternoon. Welcome to the second video of two regarding the Parashat Noach. In the first part, we looked at the history of the flood and that the flood was a mikveh to wash away the collective sin of the world. We looked at how Adonai used the flood to recreate the world, and we learned that if if Noach did not put his faith into practice, he would have drowned in the flood. We spoke about the meaning of the dates around the flood, and the emphasis is that Adonai saves those who love him. In this video, we'll take a deep dive in the following topics. First of all, Ham transgressed against Noah, but Ham's son, Canaan or Canaan, was cursed by Noah. And why is this? We'll explore that. We'll look at the backstory of the Tower of Babel, and I'll talk about Abram's early life as well. Have you ever wondered why Mrs. Noah's name is never mentioned in the scriptures? Or have you noticed that in Genesis 9 verse 18, it is written that Noah's sons came out of the ark, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then Canaan, the son of Ham, is mentioned almost as if he's a fourth son of Noah. After the flood, we read that Noah planted a vineyard and had a few sips too many. And in his drunken state, he lay passed out in his tent to sleep it off. Ham saw his father's nakedness, but Canaan got cursed for Ham's transgression. How can that be? I suspect when I read that it is because of a family scandal. When Noach was intoxicated, Ham saw an opportunity to rise up against his father's authority. He desired to be the leader of the family and to rule over his brothers. Ham's attack on Noah was two-pronged. From the book of Yasher, we spoke already about it, that Ham stole Adam's cloak that was made by Adonai from Noach on the ark. And then we also read the second step of two is that he uncovered his father's nakedness. I told the story, and I call it a story because it's not biblical, but extra biblical, from apocryptic book of Yasher, the story of Adam's cloak. And I did that in the second video of Parashat Bereshit, if you want to go back and listen to it. But the question is, what does it mean to uncover your father's nakedness? Now, there's lots of scripture here to read. In Leviticus 18, it's almost the entire chapter. It's verses 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. All those verses says, don't uncover a close relative's member's nakedness. And then in Leviticus 20, verses 10, 11, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 repeats more of the same. Don't uncover the nakedness of your relative. And amongst the prophets, Ezekiel in chapter 23, verse 10, and Isaiah in chapter 47, verse 3, says the same thing. Don't uncover the nakedness. Now, if you go and read the scriptures, you'll see what it means. It is a polite way to say that don't have illegal sexual intercourse with a close family member. Or in the case, if you uncovered your father's nakedness, it means sexual intercourse with your father's wife. What the text therefore means is that Ham raped his own mother. And Canaan was conceived from that horrible deed. We read of similar occurrences when usurping rebels rose against somebody in authority. I'll give you 4 examples. In Genesis 35, verse 22, Reuben rose against Isaac by sleeping with Bilhah, his father's concubine. In the second book of Samuel, chapter 3, verse 6 and 7, General Abner slept with King Saul's concubine in an attempt to do a coup d'etat. In the second book of Samuel, chapter 16 as well, verses 20 to 22, Absalom slept with King David, his father's concubines, and he did it on the roof of the palace so that the whole nation could witness that he replaced his father. In the first book of Kings, chapter 2, verse 22, Adonijah, Absalom's brother, asked for Abishag's hand in marriage, and King Solomon executed him for asking that. It is exactly because Abishag, if you remember the history when David was old and he couldn't keep warm, he married a young girl called Abishag. It's the same Abishag. And even though he did not have sexual intercourse with her, they slept together so that she could warm him during the winter nights. Now, Adonijah wanted to marry Abishag, and the scripture says she was a very beautiful girl, but the marriage of his father's wife would mean that he would take authority over Solomon, and that's why Solomon had him executed. So I hope that explains the issue that happened with Ham and Canaan. Some of your questions should be answered. In summary, there was a Jerry Springer style scandal in Noah's family as Ham desired to overthrow Noah's authority. It caused Noah to curse Canaan, who was born out of Ham's incest with his own mother. It also is the reason why Canaan is almost mentioned as the 4th son in Noah's family. And incidentally, Canaan's bad heritage continued. We read later in the Bible that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were Canaanite cities. So this vile character streak continued through his generations. And that is why the Canaanites were mere placeholders in the Holy Land until the rightful owners, Israel, came to possess it. Canaan, or the Canaanites, were cursed both by Adonai as well as Noah. We'll move on to the Tower of Babel, or Babel. Nimrod's power was said to come from the garment that Adonai made for Adam. Under the intimidating leadership of Nimrod, Noah's descendants relocated to the plain of Shinar, in between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Shinar is spelled in Hebrew Shinresh. It's an expression in the Hebrew language of intense hatred, anger, or even violence. If you look at the letters and the meaning in the letters, Shin represents fire and Resh represents head, a head of fire. Now, Nimrod chose this name Shinar as a slogan for his rebellion against Adonai. He wanted to be worshipped, not unlike, and in that he wasn't unlike the despots in the postmodern era where we live now. Nimrod declared himself to be an impersonation of the sun god. And that comes from the Shinresh. His wife, Semiramis, Nimrod declared to be the moon goddess or the mother goddess. Their religion, Nimrod and Semiramis's, region endured through the ages and is present today in our societies. We know it as Satanism and as Zoroastrianism. We know it as paganism, and we know it as Roman Catholicism through Maria worship. And sadly, even by ignorant Christians who celebrate Easter, which is named after Ishtar, and Ishtar is one of the many names used to worship Semiramis through the centuries. In Abraham's early life, was not recorded in the Tanakh, in the Bible, but it comes from apocryptic books. When Abram was born, Nimrod ruled the land. He built the Tower of Babel in defiance of Adonai's order for Noah's descendants to spread out and fill the world. And Adonai confused people's languages to stop the construction project of the Tower of Babel. I want to make a remark here that have you noticed that the European Union Parliament building in Brussels is designed after Nimrod's Tower of Babel? And have you also noticed that the same design featured in the opening ceremony of the recent 2022 Commonwealth Games in Birmingham? People are once again rebelling against Adonai, and Adonai's response is sure to follow. Abram, or what I'm going to share with you about young Abram, he was still called Abram then and not Abraham. His father Terah manufactured idols in the city of Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram was born incidentally in the year 1948 using Hillel's calendar. So 1948 years, 1948 years since creation. Does that date sound familiar to you? It should be, because the state of Israel have been born in 1948 using the Gregorian calendar. There's no coincidences in Adonai's plans for the world. It's just amazing. Back to Terah and Abram's story. A slave woman in Terah's household gave birth to a baby boy on the same night as Abram was born. Nimrod's sorceress warned him that in Terah's house will be a boy born that will cause the demise of Nimrod. So Nimrod sent soldiers to Terah to take the baby captive. Terah, in his wisdom at the moment, he gave the baby of the slave woman to the soldier instead and saved baby Abram. Nimrod murdered the baby boy when he received him by strangulation with his own hands. It is a fell deed, but it was repeated in history. There's nothing new under the sun. It was repeated by Pharaoh murdering Israelite baby boys before the Exodus. It was also repeated by Herod, who murdered all the baby boys 2 years and younger around Bethlehem or Bethlehem in Israel when the three wise men, I shouldn't say three wise men because we don't know how many, but when the wise men came to look for the King of Kings, and Herod perceived this to be a threat to him. Back to Abram. Terah, Abram's father, knew that Abram was not safe in Ur. So he sent the boy away to live in a cave with Shem, Noah's son, Shem, and great-great-great-grandfather to Abram. Noah died about 10 years before Abram was born, but Abram grew up in Shem's household and no doubt heard Shem's first-hand account of the flood. Abram's faith came to faith probably and became the father of faith, probably because of Shem's testimony. The next step, different sources quotes different ages of Abram when this happened. sometime whether he was 13 or 15 or even as old as 58. I don't know, but that's not so important. Terah was going on a business trip. While Terah was away, and they asked Abram to come and take care of Terah's business. While Terah was away, Abram destroyed all the idols in Terah's idol factory shop. He left only one large idol left, and he took a big stick and he put it in this idol's hands. So when Terah returned, he was quite upset to see his business destroyed like that, and he demanded an explanation from Abram. Abram said that the idols were fighting over food, and this big idol took the stick and he smashed all the smaller ones. Terah knew it wasn't true, and he said so much. He said to Abram that idols don't eat and they're not alive. And Abram famously answered him, Father Terah, your own words testify against you. You know these idols are not alive, yet you make them, you sell them, and you even pray to them. Nimrod heard of this, Abram smashing the idols, and he demanded to see Terah. Abram and Terah's third son, who was named Haran. I don't know what happened to Terah's second son, who was called Nahor, so he's not part of the story as it continues. During the showdown in Nimrod's palace, Abram testified about the one true God, Adonai, and rubbished the idols. Nimrod worshipped the sun, as I explained already, and fathered the satanic religion of Zoroastrianism. And Nimrod was furious at Abram for destroying these idols and for confessing the one true God, because he wanted to claim godliness. So in his anger, he knew that Terah were idol manufacturers, so he didn't suspect Terah to have faith in Adonai. But he demanded Haran to make a decision for Adonai or for Nimrod. And Haran decided that he will reserve his opinion, his decision. He will delay his decision because he feared for his life, and he first wanted to see what will happen to Abram. Nimrod ordered Abram to be thrown in a furnace or a large oven to be burnt to death. And this is a precursor of what happened to Daniel's friends in Babylon. You can read about that in Daniel 3, verse 8 to 25. However, when Abram was thrown in the furnace, he didn't burn. He was not harmed by the fire at all. And when Haran saw that Abram wasn't burning, he blurted out that he too believed in the God of Abram. And Nimrod had him thrown into the fire as well, but Haran burnt to death. Because his faith was conditional. It wasn't unconditional like Abram's faith. That's why Abram had to adopt Lot, Haran's young son. After these events, Terah and Abram knew they had to leave Earth for their safety. So they moved to Haran's city, founded by Haran, and they lived there until Terah died, and until Adonai called Abram to go on to the promised land. I hope that you are motivated to place your unconditional trust and faith in Adonai, like Abram did. If you put your faith and trust in Him and Adonai and in His Son, Yeshua HaMashiach, then you will be saved from the eternal fire. But in response to your salvation, you have to put your faith into action. Heed His call on your life and bear fruit. If you seek Him, He will find you and He will give you shalom. And shalom means completeness and peace. May God bless you. Shabbat Shalom.